What is up, sexy people of the internet? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back in 2023. Ignore the Christmas trees. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Should all the good. This must be what it's like, see on those cookery shows? Like when they're like, I just watched Nigella Lawson's one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like that.
This is Jules Holland hooting Annie. Like it's recorded in October.
Yeah. Must be awkward, eh?
Yeah.
Like if you're in that studio, sorry, we're going to get to the review in a second.
Yeah.
But if you're in that studio or that, and you're pissed as a fart, which they all are, right? Totally at their face on the booze, and Jules all the rest, and you're like, oh, Christmas, like I'm thinking, oh, Happy New Year, kissing everyone like that, and then you walk out and you've still got 3 months left of the year. You're like, oh, we closed the door on that year. What we doing?
Yep.
Yeah. Awkward.
Metal Epidemic. Getting started early.
Back.
We are back for another review, and we are kicking off 2023. That's right. With the new album from Floridian Death Metal legends, Obituary. The band's new album, Dying of Everything, will be released on January 13th on Relapse Records.
It's also pretty much the state of my liver post-Christmas, is dying of everything.
So, formed in 1984, Duncan.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Almost as old as us. This is album number 11.
Why would you do that?
Well, we're pretty old. Not as old as Obituary. Album number 11 from Obituary, which follows up the band's self-titled album from 2017. What the hell happened to our planet, Duncan? That is the question.
All right. I thought you were like, you want to get in at the start of this review, Dave? I thought we were here to talk about albums.
No, that is the question that Obituary drummer Donald Tardy asked himself at the height of the pandemic. The answer became the title for the Floridian Death Metal Masters' 11th album. Dying of Everything seems like a proper name for this point in history, he says. I think it just fits with what everybody has been going through these last 2 years. Like everyone else, Obituary spent a lot of time at home recording during the pandemic. Tardy and his brother John used the enforced downtime to upgrade their own redneck studios, where they self-produced Dying of Everything and the 4 previous Obituary albums. We had so much time to do it because it was the middle of COVID and everything was shut down, Donald says, but writing-wise, we were in our groove, and that really hasn't changed much. When the Tardy brothers and their bandmates finished tracking the album, they sent it off to Full Force Studio in New York, where Joe Cincotta conjured up a top-shelf mix. So, Duncan.
Dave.
Kicking it off with some old-school death metal.
Imagine just blistering into a new year with Obituary. I mean, that's just fucking nuts.
Madman.
It's like
Madman, Duncan.
Welcome to a brand new year, dying of everything.
Setting the tone for 2023.
The way things are going, Dave. Yes, that's right.
So yeah, Obituary. What can I say? Been a fan for a long time, gentlemen. One of they're definitely in the kind of handful of first death metal bands that I was introduced to, along with like Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse and Malevolent Creation, all that sort of stuff. So I was really excited to hear what Obituary would sound like in 2023, Duncan. But what about yourself? What were you thinking about Obituary and their new album? Was it something you were keen to delve into?
So yeah, I'm maybe not as big an Obituary fan as you are. That's not to say that I dislike them in any way. Of the kind of the bands that you have mentioned there that were kind of in that, like the first proper wave of kind of more popular death metal. And when I say popular, I don't mean like shifts millions of units going platinum next week. I mean bands where you would actually see like a number of maybe like metalheads wearing those t-shirts as opposed to the really obscure like one-off band. You'd be like, that doesn't even look like a band name.
Yeah.
Obituary were definitely on that cusp, and had been a trailblazer for a while. You know what I mean? Even though the genre that they kind of helped establish completely changed. There is a kind of comfort level about, very similar to what we had with the Cannibal Corpse, like what, 2 years ago, just over a year and a half ago, a year and a bit ago.
Yeah.
But there's a comfort level of knowing that, like, some bands found their sound a long time ago,
Yeah.
and have absolutely no need nor desire to change. And that's kind of what I love about this release. Is I knew roughly what I thought it was going to sound like at play, and it kind of ticked those boxes, but that's not to shortchange it by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is, and I did something that I don't normally do. I did go back and check out the previous album, which I'd never heard.
Okay.
And I listened to this. I actually think this sounds a lot more focused, and I don't know if this has had the more time involved that they're talking about to kind of go through the kind of recrafting process. But this one just sounds very, as an album, it just flows really, really, really well. It's got a ton of personality on it, like just shitloads of it. A bit of quirk as well, which we will touch on in a wee second, where things get a wee bit kind of was like, all right, I see what you're doing. And then just like at the same time as you're getting that death metal stuff, they've also kind of, like Cannibal Corpse on their most recent album, just co-opted like some really cool thrash elements into their sound. Like I challenge you to shove on like track 2 The Wrong Time and not get like a little whiff kind of late 80s, early 90s Sepultura. It's in that, it's just a fucking Sepultura riff. Drums building behind it, thundering through. Bit of Slayer. I'm going to be saying that a lot. I feel like I'm saying that every other review. Oh man, Slayer. Which makes you wonder, like, if Slayer were still releasing albums. See, if Slayer released an album in 2022 as their first album, would they be classed as a thrash metal band, or would they be classed as an old school death metal band? Does make you wonder, because they certainly were one of the bands that seemed to straddle the lines. The thing about Obituary is Obituary founded about the same time, so it's not as if they've co-opted that sound. That's just the sound that was going around at the time, and they were just decidedly more evil than Slayer, which is the death bit. But what I like about it is it kicks off with Barely Alive, big thumping, stomping, snarling, old school Obituary sound, plenty of ride, plenty of double bass, plenty of growly kind of vocals. It's kind of awesome. Wrong Time sets out this kind of more thrashier thing going on, like I say, a la Sepultura. With it, Consequence kicks in. Once again, grooves. This album's got tons of grooves. Some of these really cool grooves. And it's all building. And I kind of, at the end of track 3, I was like, right, I've got my handle on this. This is cool. Nothing going to, like, surprise me here. And then the first of a couple of quirky tracks kick in. And that's War. War is fucking amazing. I know what some people are saying, what's it good for? Absolutely nothing. I would say, shut your fucking mouth. This track is amazing. Like, very simple lyrics. Just a stomping fucking headbang riff. Like honestly, it's such, like, you can imagine people, and I'm going to use my words carefully here, I mean this just in general motion and not because of any allegiance, marching to this in formation. It's just got a very kind of feel to it. And almost, Dave's going to hate me, Rammstein-esque riff that kind of works its way through, even to the bit where it cuts out and does the kind of acoustic-y sound. Kind of reminded me of another kind of marching track by Rammstein, Links 2, 4, 5. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. But once again, just kind of stripped back, dying of everything. The title track comes in, dark as fuck. Like, bleak as balls. Just amazing. Then My Will to Live kicks in, a bit longer. We're building. We're having some fun with it. And then the track that maybe didn't land with me the best at the whole album was By the Dawn. I think it's fine. I kind of felt... Give me a second. I think it was fine. The reason I think it was fine is the next track kicks in, Weaponize the Hate, which is just fucking amazing, right? Once again, it's got a really cool, catchy lyric that's just repeated over. It's got like a proper earworm chorus. And then the album kind of closes in spectacular 1-2 punch stylings with Torn Apart and Be Warned. So yeah, I mean... I don't think they're necessarily like, if you're an Obituary fan, right, you're not going to be put off by this album. If you've never gotten into Obituary and you have like no inclination of like the sound that they do, this album ain't going to convert you. But if you fall in that category of people that, like myself, are all of a sudden craving a bit of the old school, with bands definitely nowadays, modern bands definitely paying homage to that old school sound. This is kind of a great album. I've been listening to this a lot with an album that we reviewed, about a week and 2 weeks ago, but by this release last year, with our Death Western.
Oh yeah.
Like, these two albums pair really fucking well together. Really, really, really. You get some Dying of Everything, some Death Western on back to back. And it's a good fucking time. It's thrash-tastic, it's heavy. Production's great. It's nowhere near overproduced. And it somehow sounds like it was recorded in the 90s. So when you're saying, like, yeah, they refit up their studios, like, with a time machine, with it, you walk through the DeLorean. It's like, it's just the perfect encapsulation of what this has got. But what's interesting about that is when you hear a lot of bands, I'm not putting my Kyle hat on here, when you hear a lot of bands doing a lot to the drums particularly to make those things stand out, and that's not on here. I could still make out everything. I could still make out every bass pedal hit, still make out every snare roll, I could still make out every ride hit. So I suppose sometimes, as long as it's produced well, as long as you record the fucker right, you don't need to fuck with it too much. Guitar tone is great. Once again, it's not detuned much in the way of anything. It sits in a nice range. And vocally, if this guy, well, you've got to put this in a perspective here. This guy's been doing this for how long?
Almost 40 years now.
And you can tell he's got an older voice, right? That's going to happen to you. But when he wants to hit those growls, they still come out. They still come out. And yeah, he's clearly taken care of his voice throughout the years. Absolutely. And it's still powerful. And I love the lyrics here. Like, there's another thing I've said about older bands is sometimes you get a bit cringy when you hear the lyrics. And you're like, old man just got an iPhone. But I mean, on this, they're all pertinent. They have a range, Obituary, and this lands within this range. So this was kind of what I was hoping for. I think it's better than the previous album in terms of, I think it's more focused, and they are like weirdly priming themselves on the crest of a wave of what I think will be old school inspired death metal coming out in 2023. So I think they are setting the tone for this year kind of specially, you know what I mean? Like, kind of setting it out, like, take notice, you're going to get a lot of that. And if this is the shade of music that we're going to be getting this year, I am all for this. I had a great time with this album. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. I'm pretty much the same, to be honest. I was thoroughly excited to hear Obituary in 2023, and I agree with a lot of what you said. In the case of Dying of Everything, it's not necessarily about the band trying to compete with all these like modern death metal bands and trying to shock listeners by adding like a fucking gravity blast here or there, you know what I mean? It's simply about Obituary taking the sound that they've been perfecting for almost 40 years and just making it sound as superior as possible. And that's what this album is. It's Obituary keeping it honest and being kind of true to themselves. And I agree with that kind of Cannibal Corpse scenario where, like, you know what they sound like, you roughly know what to expect. But I suppose it was just a case of, can they deliver an album that just kind of fucks from start to finish?
Literally your favourite description.
And the answer is yes, Duncan. Yes, they can. This has the nostalgia ripping from it, so you get that classic Obituary vibe, the kind of the slowly we rot or the Cause of Death era kind of style delivery. The riffs are like soaked in this old school. Kind of stylistically anyway, but they come from they come with a more kind of heftier production. So nothing sounds thin or lacking in power. If you listen to the riffs on the wrong time, it's just like you'll know exactly what I mean. If you're not kind of like banging your head with that kind of big stank face during that song, then you're clearly fucking dead inside. But because
or dying of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything about it will make you want to lose your shit. But not only are the riffs and the kind of rhythms very Moorish, but it's very memorable as well. And that's something, again, like, sorry to keep going on about Cannibal Corpse, but they really nailed that on the last album as well. It's bludgeoningly heavy, and it has the savage vocals, but they've created these little hooks and the riffs and the lyrics that really stay with you after it's over. The Wrong Time and By the Dawn are great examples of that. Where you just I was just randomly shouting "By the Dawn" just randomly after the album, and
your family loves you, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't wait to go abroad with you last year.
Yeah, people will be staring at you, just be like, yeah, steer clear of that guy. But I thought the same as you, vocally and lyrically, I think John Tardy sounds killer throughout the album.
Brilliant.
He still sounds as passionate as he did on Slowly We Rot. And I think his tone has improved. If you go back and listen to that first album and listen to this, you could hear he sounds
even measured.
More. Yeah, he sounds
really measured.
Even more commanding now than he ever did before. But there's lots of these little kind of memorable moments on this. Without a Conscience has some kind of almost kind of tribal kind of drumming that really accents the riffs. It's very Mouth for War. That's the kind of what I was hearing in my head, very Pantera-esque. And then the solo on that track is absolutely killer.
Oh yeah, I never even talked about the solos. The solos are blistering on this.
Yeah,
so good.
Ken Andrews sounds absolutely flawless. His lead work on the album is so good. And then when you combine that with Trevor Tardy and his kind of rhythm guitar playing, which provides a very kind of solid backbone to the whole album, you can hear how kind of super tight that they're playing they are, and they have great, really good chemistry between them as well. I agree with you. This is predominantly a death metal album, but on the title track and a few of the other tracks, you've got this huge kind of thrash streak running through this.
Which one? That's Cannibal Corpse as well. On that last Cannibal Corpse album, I said to you, there's moments I was have I got my genres muddled up now? Can I not differentiate, or is it just that you get to a certain age and time moves on in a certain way where what you look back is being you look back and you're like, that first Korn album was great and it's on the classic rock channel, and you're like, not classic rock,
no.
Fucking no. Is there a point where maybe those genres kind of blur the lines to the point where they do become similar, or is it a case of death metal has went so heavy and everything now that this, by comparison, while still being heavy, has that speed element that is more akin to something like thrash than it would necessarily. I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think that more attacking pace gives you a really good balance on this album. It never feels I never felt like the album was stuck in the same gear. The way they go from Without a Conscience into War, which are both quite kind of mid-tempo, but then they know it's time, let's flip the switch and hit you with a bit of kind of thrashy speed on the title track. So it never felt repetitive in its pace at all. But I mean, I suppose at this point in their career, the songwriting and the arrangement skills are pretty much second to none. As is their kind of awareness of how to kind of structure an album, using little techniques just to emphasize certain elements of the album. I really like the way they overlap the vocals, for example. There's quite a clever technique where John will come in with a scream or a lyric and it just overlaps the end of the previous sentence. And then when they couple that with that kind of 90s style reverb and the vocals, the blend is just, it's cool. Really cool, really awesome. I really like that. I really enjoyed the finale to the album, To Be Warned, and it's kind of for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. It's another change of pace. This time it drops down into a very kind of sludgy, almost, it's got that kind of crowbar kind of pace to it. But they still keep it very much within the death metal realms. It sounded like the kind of darkest track on the album, due to the kind of bleakness of some of the riffs, and there's a bit the lead work's a little bit more darkened, but I thought it worked really well as a closer, and it's pretty much the opposite of the way the album opened, so it feels very much like a conclusion to the album. Weirdly enough, and I didn't really know why until you just mentioned it there just now, and it's probably now making more sense. The only track that I found kind of uneventful was War. which is really.
We flipped the script, man.
Yeah.
We flipped it. Yeah.
I was just like, for me, like they use the same kind of motif right through the whole track. Like the vocals as well, they tend to kind of repeat themselves. And I felt like I was just waiting on something to happen, and it never really did. I liked the little section they play where the kind of riff plays without the distortion. I thought that was cool. But out with that, that was the only track on the album I was like, no, it's all right, but it just didn't kind of grab me as much as the rest. But now that you mentioned the Rammstein thing, maybe it does
have a Rammstein-ish riff, which is not a bad thing. It's a bad thing in Dave's world. In my world, that's a great thing.
That could be it. The production on the album, just like it's weird. It's so old school. Like everything about it screams 90s death metal. Very kind of nostalgic, and I love that about Obituary. Like all their albums are pretty much like that. They conform to no one. They know their sound, but at the same time, like this album can compete with the newer death metal albums that are coming out. You know, it still hits like fucking Mike Tyson. The riffs are fucking meaty. The drums are pounding. So even though it's old school, it's still very kind of fresh and kind of in your face.
That's what I think you could put like a 200 stab wounds on as a support for Obituary,
absolutely.
And it would work fucking so well.
Yeah.
Like, and you wouldn't lose anything there. Like that's the beauty of this now with these kind of these youngsters these days with their old school death metal sound. Like it flows in really, really well. I was thinking about it all the way through this. It has that 90s feel, but weirdly it's very in vogue. I hate saying those words when talking about a death metal album.
Yeah.
So
the only other thing I wanted to mention is it's not something that I usually really go into, but the album features artwork by the late Mariusz Lewandowski. So he was like a Polish painter. He did artwork for loads of different metal bands over the years, Lorna Shore and Psychroptic, Abigail Williams, bands like that. He has a very distinctive style, and it was one of those things that's very like instantly recognizable within the metal scene. As soon as you see it, like that's a Lewandowski, like as soon as you see it. And he passed away in 2022, but I think the band had said they thought this might be the last thing that he ever did, artwork wise, and it's fucking awesome. I love the artwork on this album.
On a t-shirt, on a poster, on
so
your
good.
back,
I think,
you know what I mean? Like,
and I think I was looking at it, I was like, why do I like this so much? But I think it's the kind of nostalgia of the,
isn't it? It's church burning.
It's got a 90s era feel to it. Like when I saw it, I was like, it reminded me of like Blessed Are the Sick or Slaughter of the Soul or Erosion of Sanity, those types of albums. And for me, it just kind of fed into the nostalgia of the album, which kind of made me love it even more. So ratings, what do you think rating wise for the new Obituary album? What are you thinking?
Like I say, there was only one song that didn't, and it clearly connected with you. There's only one song that maybe didn't connect with me as much as the rest, but I still enjoyed it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it just didn't hit me the same way all the other ones did. I wasn't walking about the house shouting at my relatives by the dawn. I wasn't doing that. But I was like, I've spun this like to death.
It's an easy listen.
It's really, really, really is. Not long as well. It's 45 minutes, 10 songs, fucking great. No filler, all killer. I'd give this a 4.5. I think we are starting off the year super fucking strong with this, and I'm just glad to hear Obituary are still on the go, man. They will tour. You know they're going to tour. They have to tour, and when they tour, they have to come over here because we're close. Florida and Scotland, it's not that far away. Time zones are okay. So it's like fucking 6 hours on a plane. Nothing. They drive further for like petrol or riots. So like, you know what I mean? They get like, not the band people. But yeah, like just get your ass to Scotland. Let us see you live. And yeah, I can't. I honestly, I say this a lot, but I mean this. If you don't like this album, there's something fucking wrong with you. I just don't know, who upset you or who touched you as a child. But this album, there's nothing. Like, it's just fucking great. So 4.5 from me.
Yeah, I think, like looking at their back catalogue, I think this stands up very well against Obituary's best albums. Slowly We Rot still has something very special about it for me. This album captures a lot of that character, but it delivers a more powerful kind of Obituary sound with the kind of newer production. which I think the production is perfectly executed for their sound. It's very nostalgic and very 90s, but it could be one of my favourite productions from Obituary. And I think the fans will love this, to be honest. I really do. If you're a fan of Obituary, I think you'll really dig this album. I'd agree. I'll go 4.5 on this one as well. It's a really strong album. And we're right out of the gate, 2023, with an absolute fucking stormer 4.5. But that's the way it is. It's just that good. So that's Obituary and Dying of Everything, out January 13th on Relapse Records.
Relapse Records slapping its big veiny release clock on the table.
Look at us, fucking January. Boom. Links below to the band and to the pre-order. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Hope you dig it. And we will speak to you very soon.
Bye, everyone.
Patronize living in a dark and dying world. Recognize